100 hours with no food, no nicotine, no caffeine, cold turkey on everything. Why did I do it? What's it like? Let's go. Hey, welcome to Cylinder Radio. I'm your host, Will Roosh, educator in Los Angeles, bringing viewpoint diversity and all kinds of different perspectives on things to the mainstream. So I am just at the tail end of a 100-hour fast. I was planning on doing 72 hours, and I added another day. And I've done a bunch of fasts before. This is actually the first year that my wife and I didn't do a 7-day water fast after Thanksgiving. So typically we have Thanksgiving, we eat a lot, and then we go 7 days on only water with some salt or electrolytes if needed. Sometimes my wife has some bone broth in there because she's a cheater. But this one's a little different. We didn't do it in November, but I'm doing it now in the new year, and I did it with some friends of mine. And this one is very different because what I was typically doing was I was in ketosis. I was in a ketogenic diet, so not eating any kind of carbohydrate. So I was very fat adapted. So when you are in ketosis, it actually makes it a lot easier. It's a smooth transition. And when you're, or you're fat adapted, so sometimes you're in ketosis, sometimes you're not. Your body is kind of like it can burn diesel or gasoline. It can kind of flip back and forth. Okay, so you're at the airport. You're never in that headspace of I need to get something to eat. You're just like, no, we'll just start burning fat now. If you're not aware about what ketosis is, essentially, it's when your body doesn't have any carbohydrates or glucose to burn for energy, it starts to burn its fat reserves, which is why we get fat. It's why we store fat. Also, where we store fat matters. Guys store it in like their gut, they get a big beer belly. Girls kind of store it in their hips and their thighs. It's in the center of your body, so it doesn't mess up your balance and equilibrium and everything like that. But it's there for an evolutionary reason, which is to have in case you don't have food. Like the record for a guy not eating anything, just I think some electrolytes or some minerals or something like that, was like 380 days. No food for 380 days. He was a big guy. He was like 400 pounds. He lost like 200 pounds doing it. My brother-in-law lost 120 pounds in just over a year. He was eating steak and bacon and eggs and all that stuff, but just zero carbohydrates, and it just melted off of him. I mean, his case is actually really, really fascinating because he was really unhealthy. He's like Samoan, and he's shorter, but like, dense, and he's like 5'6" maybe, and he got up to 350 pounds. And he went to the hospital. He had congestive heart failure, water in the lungs, type 2 diabetes, sleep apnea. Like he had everything, essentially like everything. And it's all gone now, all of it. Like he doesn't have diabetes anymore. He couldn't sleep laying down for a couple of years. He had to sleep sitting up because of the water in his lungs. Now he sleeps laying down. I mean, it's incredible. And it's just from ketogenic diets. So, that's just like, testimonial, pretty fascinating. But this time was different for a couple of reasons. One is I wasn't in ketosis, so I was eating more carbohydrates than I typically do. I don't eat a lot of bread or pasta or anything like that, but I was eating more than I typically do. So, the initial like lack of glucose, the lack of carbohydrates was a little, difficult. But also, I have caffeine or coffee at least once a day. I usually have one, sometimes two, but typically one a day. For those of you that are familiar, I had a hemorrhagic stroke in 2018. And the reason they said was because of prolonged dehydration. I was on the carnivore diet. And I was also drinking a lot of coffee, like a lot. Like I would have a 32-ounce coffee in the morning with protein powder in it before the gym, go get after at the gym, and then go teach all day. And then after school, I get a 20-ounce, a venti tall cold brew, and drink that on the way to jiu-jitsu, and then do jiu-jitsu. And I like sometimes would have a water bottle. Sometimes I'd forget my water at jiu-jitsu. Like it was bad. I'd wake up in the morning, my pee would be dark. And I was like, what's the worst that can happen? Well, a stroke. I had a hemorrhagic stroke. It was really nasty in 2018. And thank God I came out of it fine. I have some dark spots in my brain, but thank God I'm okay. But because of that, I limit my caffeine intake. I limit my coffee intake. And I try to drink a lot of water. I have a minimum of a gallon of water a day because I just have high water needs. But also, for the past maybe 4 months, maybe 6 months, I started taking nicotine pouches. I don't smoke cigarettes or vape or anything like that, but these nicotine pouches, because sometimes I'm up late, I'm running Patter Docs now, and it's a lot of work. I'm editing a lot and reaching out and, networking. It's like running a business. I'm used to a school teacher schedule, which is very, very nice. School teachers, it can be definitely a challenging job, but the schedule is actually pretty great. And running a business is totally different schedule. So it's, early mornings, late nights. And nicotine is a nootropic. It also, is a bit of a stimulant. So I've been having nicotine pouches, several a day. And I was like, wow, I'm definitely addicted to nicotine for sure. But I gave that up, gave caffeine up, which is very hard for people to give up, and gave food up. And I'm fine. Like I said, it's about 95 hours in or something like that, and I'm fine. But the only reason I'm breaking it, honestly, like I would keep going. But the only reason I'm breaking it is I'm not working out as much as I used to as well. Again, teacher schedule, I had more time for going to the gym and stuff like that. And I'm not lifting as much. And prolonged fasting beyond 4 days or so, actually probably beyond 3 days, is going to start to eat away at muscle mass. And I don't want to, lose muscle. So for that reason, I'm breaking it early. But I have done, a lot of fasts before. I've also done intermittent fasting, but what I call it is like OMAD, 1 meal a day. And even now, I haven't had 3 square meals a day, like a nice hearty breakfast and then a nice hearty lunch and nice hearty dinner. I don't think I've had that in like 8 years. I typically have 1 meal a day. I have a coffee with some like heavy cream in it, like some fat in it, and then I eat 1 meal a day typically. Sometimes I have a small lunch, I have some eggs or something like that, but I haven't had 3 like breakfast, lunch, and dinner in, I think it's been like 8 years since I started on this like real health journey when my second son was born. But there are health benefits to fasting. I'm not going to say you should go fast. I'm not telling you to go out and just drink water. I was teaching teenagers, and a bunch of the senior girls were like, hey, we're going to do a water fast. I was like, don't get it from me. I'm not telling a bunch of teenage girls to don't eat. You know what I mean? Like that's a bad idea. Okay. But look into it. You know what I mean? Like talk to your doctor, go look at like, maybe not your doctor, but like find good doctors and stuff like that. Dr. Jason Fung is a great resource. Dr. Peter Attia, he's kind of changed a little bit on fasting, but he's a good resource. There's a bunch. In 2016, Yoshinori Osumi, I think Yoshinori Osumi, in 2016, won the Nobel Prize for cellular autophagy. And essentially what that is as your body is without nutrients, it starts to essentially eat itself. Okay, and the way it eats itself is by survival of the fittest. Okay, so it's evolution inside your body. So the weak cells get eaten, they get recycled by the stronger cells. Okay, so the senescent cells, this is like nerdy stuff, but like the senescent cells are the ones that cause cancer and disease and things like that. Those are the first ones to go. Those are the first ones to die. And then the strong cells, survive. So it's like evolution inside of your body. It's really, really cool. There is a documentary with Chris Hemsworth called Limitless. It's on Disney Plus. I highly recommend it. The 3rd episode is with Dr. Peter Attia and Chris Hemsworth. And Chris Hemsworth goes on, I think he does like a 4-day fast or something. I remember, watching that, doing my 7-day fast. I was like, you baby. But he does a 4-day fast. And in that, there's a clip that kind of explains a little bit what's happening. I'll share the clip here with you.
Working off the energy from his last meal. But once that's gone, he's going to start to feel a lot worse. But I'm going to want him to stick with this. Because of all the things that we can do to impact Chris's longevity, periodic fasting may be one of the more effective.
My food contains glucose, the fuel that feeds the trillions of healthy cells in my body. But that glucose also feeds something else. Zombie cells. Old, damaged cells that have lingered beyond their useful life. By spewing toxic sludge, these zombies infect other healthy cells, speeding up the aging process. Everything from hair loss and wrinkles to the onset of arthritis, cancer, and dementia. But what scientists have realized is that when we fast and cut off the supply of glucose, That zombie army is starved of energy, which saps them of their power.
Okay, so I think it's really cool that, health science of 2025 is aligned with like ancient religions. The idea of fasting is entrenched in a lot of religious practice. The first thing that Jesus did after he was baptized was go off in the wilderness and fast for 40 days. 40 days, no food. Okay. And while he was out there, he got tempted by the devil. The devil's like, you can have this, you can have this, you can have this. Aren't you hungry? Come on, eat it, eat it, eat it. That was to forge him, to prepare him for the hardships ahead, which gets me into, because it's hard, by the way. Like, it's hard, I took my son to the doctor. He has a little fever right now. And I got him some acai. And, I was at the tail end of 3 days and he was eating the acai and I smelled it. I was like, oh, it smells so good. Like, you walk around like a city, there's food places everywhere, everything. You smell things. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. Your senses actually get heightened when you're in ketosis, by the way. So your eyes get a little sharper, your sense of smell gets a little sharper because the lion doesn't hunt when it's full. Human beings don't hunt when they're full. They relax when they're full. Okay, when they're hungry is when they hunt. So your body is actually programmed and structured to get sharper when you're hungry. I did jujitsu today. So I was 85 hours into a fast and I did jujitsu today. And I did great, rolling with a bunch of really good black belts and brown belts and able to tap them or do well. I was really, really sharp with only water in me, and a little bit of salt. So, this idea that you need carbohydrates in order to be at peak performance, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I went on a big elk hunt a couple of years ago, and I was in ketosis for that. I didn't eat any carbohydrates leading up for the several weeks leading up to the trip. But then when I was there, and we were camping at 12,000 feet or something. It was really, really high. And hiking up the Rocky Mountains looking for elk. And it was really, really exhausting. So what I did was I was in ketosis. And then when I got up there, I was eating gummy bears and M&Ms, and we had pizza, and I was carbo loading, and I had so much energy. There's a great ultra marathon runner named Zach Bitters who does the same thing. He lives in ketosis, he lives in a carnivore diet, but then when he goes to break records in his running, he has a bunch of carbohydrates. Because those carbohydrates, sugar and stuff like that glucose is there for a reason. It's to give you an extra boost of energy. I feel fairly strong while I'm fasting or in ketosis, but I'm stronger on carbohydrates. So it's a way to kind of think about that as well. But anyway, getting back to why I'm doing this. Why have I done this in the past? It was typically for health reasons, but also just to do hard things. There's a family motto that we have for my three sons, Bo, Gray, and Mac. They're 10, 7, and 3. And every day we drop them off at school. What's the Roosh family motto? I can do hard things. This idea of taking on challenges. And any way you slice it, going without food is difficult. Giving something up, and again, I gave up food, which, a lot of people say is hard. Giving up coffee. If you're a regular coffee drinker, give up coffee for 4 days. Try it out. It's hard. If you're a regular nicotine user, whether you smoke cigarettes or you do Zyn pouches or whatever, try giving that up for 4 days. It's hard. And I did all 3. Okay. So why am I doing this? Well, part of it, again, is to do hard things, but also for clarity. I'm in a season right now of massive transition. All I've known as an adult is being a classroom teacher. That's it. Okay. And I've taught at different schools, and I teach, social science and things like that. I know it well. I'm good at it. And now I'm running a business. Now I'm working from home and traveling around. It's a very different, very, very, very different life. And sometimes it gets cluttered. The amount of emails that I get is a lot more now than it was when I was just a classroom teacher. Okay. Now I have to use social media in a totally different way than just playing around. Okay. So my brain gets cluttered, and when you get rid of food and other things that you lean on, it does give you mental clarity. So part of the reason I did it was for mental clarity. It also frees up a lot of time. Think about how much time you spend getting your coffee, getting your food throughout the day. That's several hours. So I have a lot to do all the time. So it gives me time to really do the things that I need to do. It's also a big part of this is recognizing that you don't need it. If you're trying to overcome any kind of addiction. Okay. And food absolutely can be an addiction. Okay. You need it too, of course. Okay. But food is an addiction. Nicotine for sure an addiction. Caffeine is an addiction. How many teachers are out in the world, saying, don't do drugs, don't do drugs, don't do drugs. If I don't get my coffee in the morning, I am a mess. Well, that's a stimulant. If I don't get my cocaine in the morning, I'm a mess. We'd fire that teacher, So just the way we structure drugs is so goofy because certain drugs are just perfectly acceptable to be addicted to. But try and give them up. Try it, okay? You recognize that you can. You can do hard things. You can. You don't need that to lean on. You don't need substances to lean on. You don't need, and the food, our food is so good. It's so, like manufactured and processed nowadays. It's so just stimulated to hit all those dopamine receptors. But even just natural food, you bite into a strawberry, it's so delicious. Okay, and going without that, you recognize that you can. That you're capable of it. Because people, just at jiu-jitsu today, a guy was like, I could never do that. I'd die if I went 4 days without food. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. You're capable of doing a lot more than you think you are. And this is just an easy way. Shouldn't say easy. It's simple, not easy, right? But everyone can do it. You can. You just have to get comfortable with getting uncomfortable. And a lot of being a business owner, like a new business owner, go out and start a new business. If you've done it before, if you're a business owner, go out and start your own business, especially something in education that's very new and it's very structured. I'm building an education platform. I have an education platform and trying to grow it. And the alternative is free. You know what I mean? It's challenging. It's stressful. Oh my gosh, it's a lot. Can I do this? Yeah, I can do it. Yeah, I can do it. I have something valuable here. You know what I mean? So going through that process, I think fasting just gave me a lot of clarity. I think that it helps you. I'm a religious person as far as I'm a Jesus person. I'm a Christian. And it helped me a lot to recognize that leaning on the word, is really something that gives me a lot more comfort than leaning onto the chemicals or the food or what have you. So I'm going to break my fast with bone broth or some sort of fat first, just a little bit. And then give it a couple hours, and then I'll have egg whites, and then give it a couple hours, then I'll start to eat regular food. If you just dive into a steak right now, maybe not 4 days isn't that long, but when I did 7 days, if I just dove into a full meal because you're hungry, you get really bad stomach cramps and everything because everything's so clean, it's cleared out. So then all of a sudden your stomach's I got to work, and it's not ready for it. So you got to kind of ease into it. When I was cutting weight a lot back when I was fighting in my 20s, I cut a lot of weight sometimes. One time I cut from 198 pounds to 176 pounds in 2 days. 22 pounds in 2 days. And when you get back, you weigh in, you're only down for a little bit. So you go in the sauna, you cut for an hour or two, and then I kind of stumble on the scale, get off the scale, and then I, rehydrate with coconut water and Gatorade and water. And you'd start with just a capful. You don't just flood yourself because your body's not used to it and you'll reject it. So you start kind of slow, easing your way back in from the fast. I'm not saying that you should fast. What I'm saying is, if you are going to do it, it's worth looking into. And if you're going to do it, just be a nerd about it. Just do a lot of research, talk to people about it, do it properly. There are dangers to literally everything in the world. So you want to be as careful as you can when it comes to doing things like that for your health. But I hope this gives you a little bit of information about fasting and a little bit more about me and my history with health and why I do this. When you're really unhealthy, and I was unhealthy for most of my early life. You might have seen an earlier video that I made about how I didn't eat a fruit or vegetable for the first 20 years of my life. That's true. I was very, malnourished and weak. And then I got sick in my early 20s with something called intracranial hypertension, spent months and months in the hospital, and I couldn't be physically active. So when I got out, I was like, I'm going to be healthy. So even the stroke that I had in 2018 was actually because I was trying to be healthy to some degree, with a carnivore diet and things. I just had some blind spots, let's say. But anyway, so thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. And I hope this gives you some information about why I'm doing the fast and fasting in general. And if you like this, if you want to keep following along with different topics that I have guests on sometimes I just talk about current events and different things, then just subscribe to the YouTube channel. And it's just Will Reusch and REUSCH. And I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.